It provokes us. It inspires us. It stirs our imagination, feeds our creativity, and sets us in motion. It takes us places we never thought possible. It is freedom, experimentation, pain, and joy. It creates new myths and reinvents old ones. It soothes the weary and offers us hope, touches our very souls. It breaks new ground, breaks down walls, and brings us together. Art connects us with ourselves and drives us forward, telling our stories and giving us voice. Art shows us who we are. Arts are part of us all.
Hello and welcome to the Canada Council for the Arts 2024 Annual Public Meeting. Bonjour, bienvenue à l'Assemblée publique annuelle 2024. My name is Yves-Gérard Méhou-Loko. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the Secretary General of the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. I'm born in France with an heritage from Benin and Nigeria. I grew up in Quebec City, and I was drawn to the Canadian Commission for UNESCO because it ties with my values and upbringing with my commitment to culture, building peace and inclusive communities. I'm a member of the Canada Council for the Arts Senior Management Committee. I have been at the Council less than a year, and so this is my first annual public meeting. Il me fait plaisir d'agir en tant que maître de cérémonie pour cette assemblée publique. I will be your MC today. Today's meeting will take place in both official languages. Cette assemblée se déroulera dans les deux langues officielles. For those of you online, you can change the language in which you are listening to this event by clicking in the link at the top right-hand corner of this page. Vous pouvez aussi changer la langue dans laquelle vous écoutez cet événement en cliquant sur le lien dans le coin supérieur droit de la page. Pour les personnes qui sont sur place, nous avons des écouteurs disponibles pour que vous ayez accès à la traduction simultanée. For those of you in the room, there are headsets available for simultaneous interpretation. We have American Sign Language et la langue des signes québécoise available today. To access this, you can click on the link on the top of your screen. La langue des signes américaine et la langue des signes québécois sont disponibles aujourd'hui. Pour y accéder, vous pouvez cliquer sur le lien en haut de l'écran. If at any point you are having technical difficulties today, click on the button on the bottom of your screen. Si vous rencontrez des difficultés techniques, eh bien aujourd'hui, nous vous invitons à cliquer sur le bouton en bas de votre écran. Je voudrais d'abord reconnaître que les bureaux du Conseil des arts du Canada à Ottawa sont situés sur le territoire non cédé de la nation algonquine-anishinaabe, présente en ces lieux depuis des temps immémoriaux. Le Conseil reconnaît que les Algonquins sont les défenseurs traditionnels et les gardiens du bassin hydrographique de la rivière des Outaouais et de ses affluents. Nous saluons leur longue tradition d'accueil dont ont bénéficié de nombreuses nations dans ce magnifique territoire, et nous nous engageons à défendre et à promouvoir la voix et les valeurs de notre nation hôte. Nous reconnaissons l'apport indéniable des communautés des Premières Nations, Métis et Inuits, à la culture canadienne dans son ensemble et leur contribution au milieu artistique du Canada. La reconnaissance du territoire autochtone manifeste une volonté de mieux définir le futur de notre société en se réconciliant avec le douloureux passé. Truth and reconciliation is a priority for the Canada Council for the Arts and the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. Our mission to work towards peace requires recognition for the past actions that shaped our country. The full land acknowledgement is available on canadaconsol.ca in both official languages. I will now give you a sense of today's agenda. First off, we will hear from the chair of the board, Jessie Wente. Then, Michelle Shala, director and CEO, will say a few words. A question and answer period will follow. A recording of this event in both official languages will be available on our website in the coming weeks. For those active on social media, you can use hashtag CanadaConsol24 to interact with posts about this event. Nous avons un programme très chargé. Alors, commençons. J'aimerais maintenant inviter Jessie Wente, le président du conseil d'administration, à prendre la parole.
Merci, thank you Yves-Gérard. Hello everyone, bonjour Annie, bonjour. En tant que président du conseil d'administration du Conseil des arts du Canada, j'ai vécu une année de transition puisque j'ai commencé à travailler avec une nouvelle directrice et chef de la direction. I'm delighted to be working with Michelle Shala, who knows the council and the arts sector so well after having held many different positions at the organization over the course of her career. This new leadership ensures continuity and familiarity with our work while also bringing important changes to our work and the organization. I am acutely aware of how difficult a time this is for the sector. But because Michelle truly embodies the Council's values, such as care for our work, respect, and openness, I believe we can look to the future with optimism. I'm already seeing a positive response in the arts sector to Michelle's priorities to reconnect, engage, and work more closely with the sector. Priorities that are strongly supported by myself and the board. The third year of the Council's strategic plan has just come to an end, and I'm happy to see that the Council has made significant strides towards meeting its ambitious commitments, including critical support provided directly to artists and arts organizations across the country. I'd like to share a few of our accomplishments. We committed to partnering and strengthening relationships to help address distinct cultural realities in the North. And we succeeded in co-developing and co-delivering 3 separate initiatives to better support Indigenous communities and beyond. The Council now has partners on the ground in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Inuit Nunavut that provide access and direct funding where it is needed most. These partnerships represent a new way of working, collaborating and sharing knowledge, while respecting the unique needs and realities of each region. The results so far demonstrate the necessity and relevance of these partnerships. It's still early days, but these initiatives are a step in the right direction, and we hope to see long-term changes in our relationships with artists in the North. Equity is a focal point in our strategic plan and a priority that we consistently work to advance. I'd like to share a recent example from the Art Bank on how we are making progress on our commitments to equity. The Art Bank launched an open call for the purchase of new artworks with the goal of establishing a collection that includes works from a broader diversity of artists. Priority was given to works by artists that were not included in the Art Bank collection and to artists who are Indigenous, Black, racialized, deaf, or having a disability, or as belonging to official language minority, youth, 2S LGBTQI+, and gender diverse communities, women, and artists at the intersection of these identities. The response to the open call was tremendous and led to the Art Bank acquiring 72 works of art from artists from every province and territory. We've seen a great response to the purchased works, and nearly all are on loan or on hold to be displayed in public venues. For those of you who have joined us in person at the Council's offices, I invite you to visit the Ajagemo exhibition space downstairs to see some of these incredible works for yourselves. Those of you online can also enjoy the Coming Into Sight exhibit online at canadacouncil.ca. You'll also see an inspiring work of art by Anishinaabe artist Chief Ladybird just outside this room that was commissioned by the Council to welcome folks into this space. Now, these are just a few examples of what the Council has accomplished in recent years, but I'm pleased to see our strategic commitments come to fruition in physical form. As we navigate a path forward, the Council's experienced board and strong governance will enable the organization to rise to any challenge. I want to thank the board for their excellent work, and I'd like to ask any members who are here to please stand up. We have some members who are unable to attend, so don't worry about the seemingly small size of the board. We are actually at full complement. In closing, I remain cautiously optimistic about what lies ahead for our sector. We know there are challenges ahead, both obvious and unexpected, but I'm confident that by working together, we can help shape a more equitable and sustainable arts sector, one that reflects a Canada of today and points us to the Canada of tomorrow. Je vous remercie. J'invite maintenant Michelle Chala, directrice et chef de la direction, à prendre la parole.
Thank you, Jessie. Hello, everyone. Bonjour. Kwekwe. I'm so excited. I'm very happy to be part in my first annual public meeting as Director and CEO of the Canada Council for the Arts. Donc, je suis très heureuse de participer à ma première Assemblée publique annuelle au Conseil en tant que directrice et chef de la direction. So while I've been in this role for about 9 months, I have dedicated my career to public service and in particular, service to the arts. I am committed and passionate about this work and this role as it brings together my deep personal values of service along with my love for the arts. So it's also deeply tied to my cultural upbringing as a person who grew up in a mixed background. So I'm Québécoise, raised in Montreal, and also grew up in the Punjabi community as a Sikh, where community service, which is known as Seva, is at the very heart of who I am, how I work, and how I lead the Canada Council. Donc, bien que notre Assemblée publique soit un moyen important pour le Conseil de fournir des mises à jour sur ses progrès et ses initiatives, je suis également heureuse de pouvoir engager le dialogue avec vous aujourd'hui. Les artistes et les organismes artistiques jouent un rôle important dans l'écosystème culturel et dans les communautés qu'ils servent ici et à travers le monde. Le Conseil est animé par la mission de soutenir les nombreuses et nombreux artistes ainsi que les organismes artistiques du pays qui nous aident à mieux nous comprendre, à mieux comprendre nos cultures et à mieux comprendre l'humanité que nous partageons. Je trouve particulièrement inspirant de constater chaque jour que le leadership du secteur, son talent, sa créativité, sa force, son dévouement continue envers les arts sont toujours aussi présents malgré les défis toujours plus importants que le secteur doit affronter. Nous savons que le secteur traverse une période difficile et nous nous engageons à trouver des moyens à aider à relever ces défis. Mais le Conseil, lui aussi, est confronté à certains défis. So a few weeks ago, you may have seen that the Council was included in the federal government's Refocusing Government Spending initiative. And as a result, the Canada Council will be reducing its current spending over the next few years. I do want to assure you that our main goal is to minimize any impact on the arts sector. These reductions will not impact the Council's regular granting programs nor our capacity to serve the sector. Even with a lower budget, we will continue to invest over $300 million directly in the arts sector every year. We will continue to support the sector through our granting programs, our wide array of prizes, our public lending right payments to authors and creators, as well as through special initiatives and partnerships. We're also continuing to deliver our priorities set out in our strategic plan, which are helping move the Council and the sector towards a more equitable and sustainable future. I'm pleased to say that the Council is on track to meet and even exceed most of the funding commitments made in our strategic plan, whether that's opening up our project funding to first-time applicants, enhanced investment in the public lending right program, or our support for international activities. And my priorities as CEO are for the Council to continue implementing its commitments, including continuing to support the rebuilding of a sustainable arts sector, improving regional distribution of our funding, prioritizing our support for historically marginalized and underserved communities, and honoring the commitments on self-determination that we have made to Indigenous peoples and nations. We also remain committed to our role in fostering cultural exchange and cooperation on an international scale. We will continue to support Canadian artists and arts organizations to develop relationships and to showcase their work in markets around the world. These priorities are aligned with many of the sector's pressing issues. Le plus important de ces problèmes, c'est que le secteur artistique se remet lentement des conséquences de la pandémie et qu'il le fait aussi de façon inégale. Et nous reconnaissons que de nombreux membres de la communauté artistique continuent d'éprouver des difficultés. Je vous assure que nous suivons attentivement la situation et que nous poursuivons le dialogue avec des organismes et que nous sommes en contact étroit avec d'autres bailleurs de fonds, y compris au niveau municipal, territorial et provincial, afin de trouver ensemble des réponses à ces difficultés. Nous co-investissons dans des programmes afin d'aider les organismes à repenser leur fonctionnement en fonction de l'évolution de la situation. Malgré le contexte actuel, je continue d'être optimiste et inspirée parce que vous êtes tous capables de faire. Nous avons été témoins de la transformation et de la nature innovante, créative et résiliente du secteur sur une base continue et nous souhaitons l'encourager et la soutenir autant que possible. En plus d'aider le secteur à se remettre sur pied, une autre priorité qui me tient à cœur, c'est l'équité. Nous savons que cela prendra du temps, mais nous travaillons activement pour faire avancer cette priorité. Nous nous efforçons de remédier les déséquilibres historiques en matière de financement dans les différentes régions afin de mieux servir l'écosystème artistique dans l'ensemble du Canada. Nous améliorons également l'accès et le financement pour les communautés historiquement mal servies et marginalisées. Et nous y parvenons, entre autres, grâce à des activités de mobilisation et de sensibilisation ciblées, en collectant et en analysant des données pour comprendre où va notre financement et où il y a des lacunes, en travaillant avec d'autres bailleurs de fonds pour mieux soutenir et comprendre l'écosystème global du financement des arts, et en soutenant et en faisant la promotion du travail de la Commission canadienne pour l'UNESCO. Les gens ne réalisent pas toujours que la Commission canadienne pour l'UNESCO fait partie du Conseil des arts. Depuis le début, le Conseil et la Commission canadienne pour l'UNESCO partagent une histoire et un objectif commun qui est promouvoir le développement durable de la société. Un bon exemple, c'est le travail incroyable que la Commission a accompli pour rehausser le profil de la décennie internationale des personnes d'ascendance africaine et de la décennie internationale des langues autochtones des Nations unies. So as we work to meet our commitments, we are continually looking at how we can support you, the arts community. It's crucial that we work together towards bringing the Council and the sector closer. Along with my Council colleagues, I've had many conversations with stakeholders across the country. To share just a few examples, I've met with members and leadership of the Canadian Arts Coalition and Business for the Arts, the Fédération culturelle canadienne-française, le Conseil québécois du théâtre, and the Regroupement québécois de la danse, as well as many, many other service organizations, arts organizations in the early part of the year. So far, since the beginning of my mandate, I've also met with stakeholders in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Quebec. I've been so inspired by the people I've met, and as I make my way to other parts of the country, including Manitoba and Newfoundland in the coming months, I look forward to continuing to engage with people and to build stronger relationships between the sector and the Canada Council. I've appreciated the benefit of being present in person across Canada, but we're also conscious of our environmental footprint, and I'm grateful that our new ways of working also make it possible to meet virtually more often and with more people. Going forward, you will hear more from us as we seek to improve our support for the sector and consult with you on timely and important topics. We know the arts community will likely continue to face many challenges, whether they be new or long-standing, but I'm convinced that working together is the way forward. At a time when we see so much divisiveness and hate in the world, I'm committed to doing everything I can to support and promote the arts. In keeping with our mandate, we will continue to promote the arts as a force to build peace, promote inclusion, combat hate, and unify a divided world. As I said earlier, the arts matter to me and you matter to me. I will do everything I can to lead the Canada Council in a way that serves you, the arts sector. I'm constantly moved by the unshakable creativity and innovative spirit of the arts community, and I'm optimistic for our future and eager to work with you to get there. I want to thank the board, council, staff, and colleagues, and all of you for being here today. Thank you so much. Merci. Miigwech.
Merci beaucoup, Michel. Nous allons maintenant passer à la période de questions. Nous invitons d'ailleurs les personnes dans la salle à utiliser les micros pour poser des questions. Et je vous rappelle que vous pouvez aussi poser votre question dans n'importe laquelle des deux langues officielles. Please feel free to ask questions in the language of your choice, and also please identify yourself when you ask a question, of course. It's always great to know who we're talking to. I'd like to take a moment at this moment to invite Lisanne Johnson, Acting Director General, Arts, Granting and Programs of the Canada Council, to the stage for the question and answer period. Nous répondrons aussi aux questions que nous avons reçues à l'avance par courriel, et j'en profite aussi pour remercier les personnes qui ont soumis des questions. We have received many questions touching on several topics and issues, and we are not available, unfortunately, not able to answer all of them today, so we took the most common themes and gathered all of them together. So to get us started, we will begin with questions that were received in advance. Nous avons reçu de nombreuses questions relatives au processus d'évaluation par les pairs, ainsi que des questions portant sur la manière dont le Conseil fournit une rétroaction aux candidates et candidats. Je me tourne vers vous, Michel, pour répondre à cette toute première question qui nous a été envoyée par Christine Curnillon. Écoutons la question.
Christine Curnillon, groupe Le Vivier. Ma question aujourd'hui pour le Conseil des arts du Canada serait est-ce que le Conseil prévoit revenir à une rétroaction des résultats? Merci.
Merci beaucoup pour cette question. C'est une question qu'on entend très souvent, en fait. Puis on sait que recevoir la rétroaction personnalisée serait l'idéal. On reconnaît, vraiment, on apprécie le travail, les efforts qui sont nécessaires pour préparer des demandes. Et on reconnaît aussi l'importance et la valeur d'offrir la rétroaction. On est confronté à un défi, qui est le défi du volume de demandes qu'on reçoit. Juste pour vous donner un exemple, depuis 2017, quand la création de nouveaux programmes, le nombre de demandes qu'on reçoit a presque triplé. Pour être encore plus précise, il y a une compétition à l'automne d'un de nos plus gros programmes, qui est le programme Explorer, créer. On a reçu presque 7000 demandes dans une seule compétition. Donc, comme vous pouvez l'imaginer, de pouvoir offrir une rétroaction personnalisée, c'est presque impossible. Par contre, on y croit profondément à la rétroaction et on est en train d'examiner des moyens de comment offrir ce genre de communication. Donc, on est en train de piloter des sessions de rétroaction en groupe qui vont pouvoir expliquer des thèmes, le genre de conseils qui pourraient aider les demandeurs dans les prochaines demandes. Donc, en fait, il y en a une qui se passe, un webinaire cette semaine. Donc, il y a toujours le temps de s'enregistrer s'il y a des gens intéressés. On va créer aussi des webinaires pour comment préparer des demandes. Donc, toutes sortes de conseils qui vont tous aussi être affichés sur notre site Web. Donc, si vous n'êtes pas capable de participer à un webinaire, toute cette information-là va être disponible aussi en ligne. Donc, tout ça pour dire qu'on est vraiment en mode de réflexion parce qu'on sait que c'est un enjeu et on serait très intéressé à avoir des suggestions de votre part aussi. Donc, on est à l'écoute et on aimerait en entendre aussi de vous. Donc, merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you, Michelle. During your time as CEO, you have received several open letters and petitions from the community on specific topics of interest to the signatories. More recently, there is an ask for Conseil to rethink multidisciplinary peer assessment committees. So on screen, you will see an excerpt of the question sent by Nick Fraser, which read as, will the Conseil reconsider the practice of multidisciplinary juries and return to hiring peers assessors who actually know the field they're evaluating? Please, Michelle.
Thank you for that question. And similar to the first question, that is also a question I've been getting, we get regularly. So I'm very happy to ask Lisanne maybe to take a stab at answering that question.
Sure, thank you very much. It's a very timely question, and it is one that we've been hearing over the last, I'd say, 12 to 18 months. I'd like to maybe just to provide some context and so everybody understands what the question is really about. Just a bit of background on peer assessment. So peer assessment is at the heart of the Council's assessment process. It's the basis on which we make our funding decisions. It is a process that we take very seriously, and so the quality and the effectiveness of the peer assessment process is something that is very near and dear to us. We work with hundreds of peer assessors across the country every year, hundreds and hundreds. We select peer assessors for on the basis of a number of different factors. So artistic experience, knowledge, disciplinary knowledge included is one of the things that we look at. But we also look at other things. We look at what region, what kind of regional knowledge people bring to the table. We also consider socio-demographic background. So when we put together peer assessment committees to assess applications, we really want to make sure that we have a diversity of opinions and perspectives at the table. It's very fundamentally important to us. We have multidisciplinary programs, and multidisciplinary assessment has been around the Council in different ways for really quite a long time, and even predates our programs. More recently, what we have done is for programs where they're assessing artistic projects, where artistic merit is one of the criteria, we have been grouping our applications in larger buckets. So as opposed to theater applications together and dance applications together, we have been grouping applications into performing arts, studio arts, and literary arts. And this is at the heart of the question that Nick Fraser asks. There are some advantages that we have seen. It really minimizes conflicts of interest. It also works really well for those projects and applicants that don't fall neatly into disciplinary buckets. Many newer voices, emerging practices, many artists who are coming from underserved communities who are not framing their work in kind of more traditional disciplinary categories. But we hear you. We hear the concern. It's a very commonly asked question. And it's a very timely question because what we want to do is we're absolutely open to looking at the effectiveness of this practice. And we have launched a pretty significant peer research project. So we are sending out a survey. We've already launched part of it to everyone who's been a peer assessor over the last 2 years. We're doing interviews with peer assessors, and we're doing focus groups with peer assessors as well. We're also doing focus groups with Canada Council employees who are involved in the assessment process. So we want to take a look at whether this practice is working. We're open to change, but we really want to make an informed decision. So we have launched the project. We'll have the results in the fall, and we'll be very happy to share a summary of that research project back with the community once it's available. And we'll look at what improvements we can make. We want to hold on to what's working, but we're sure that there's lots of things that will come out of the research report that we can make improvements on. Before I turn it back to you, I'm just going to make a pitch, which is please self-nominate. For anyone who's interested in serving as a peer assessor at the Canada Council, we have a self-nomination process that's fairly new. It's through our portal. If you create an account, you'll be invited to also self-nominate as a peer assessor. And we are really want to make sure that we have a rich base of peer assessors from across the country with all sorts of different expertise and disciplinary knowledge to draw from. So that's my pitch, is if you want to serve as a peer assessor, please self-nominate.
That's great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great pitch.
Yeah, great
by the
pitch.
way. As I mentioned earlier, we have received several questions in advance. So among the questions submitted by participants in advance were several related to the state of the world and global crises and the role of Conseil in responding to the turmoil all around us. So this is a question that many of us actually are struggling with, and which Brad Lepp, the executive director of the Professional Association of Canadian Theatres, have expressed very eloquently in this video shared with the Conseil, please.
Hello, my name is Brad Lepp. I'm joining you from Toronto, Treaty 13 territory covered by the Dish with One Spoon Covenant and the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. First, happy World Theatre Day. I hope everyone will get tickets to go see a show soon. My question is this. Every week we're reading about organizations on the brink of collapse. These stories, coupled with what we read in the news, the world feels like a pretty awful place right now. The term I've heard is that we are in a state of polycrisis. Globally, locally, economically, environmentally, socially, everywhere we look, and not just in our sector, we are confronted by things failing. And so from your national perspective, where do you see hope? Where do you find optimism for the year ahead? Thank you.
Well, what an amazing question by Brad Lepp. Michelle, please, I will turn to you to respond to this one.
I mean, that is the question if you think of what we're experiencing every day. And so, you know, the simplest answer is I find hope in all of you. And I find hope in Brad's question. I find hope in all of you sitting here and the colleagues I work with. Really, that question resonates. So much of what we see is all about divisiveness and hate, and I think including a lot of difficult coverage in the arts sector itself. I mean, every day there's another story. So it can be overwhelming, and sometimes it is hard to remain hopeful or positive, but I am a deeply optimistic person because of the sector we work in and the voice of artists, and that's I feel profoundly that that is the mandate of the Canada Council, that's my role, and I love it, which is how do I support those voices? Because that is where the optimism and the hope really lies. And providing the opportunity for artistic voices, diversity of voices across all parts of the sector, showcasing that incredible work, the power of the arts to bring communities together despite the challenges, despite differences, that is where the hope and optimism is. So I really, really appreciate that question, because I think it's something that we all ask ourselves, and we're all in this together. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Michelle. As you know, both the Canadian Council and the Canadian Commission for UNESCO are committed to promote the arts as a force to build peace, promote inclusion, combat hate, unify a very divided world. So we now welcome further questions from those in the room. And again, please, n'hésitez pas à vous identifier lorsque vous posez votre question. De cette façon-là, on saura à peu près où vous êtes. Donc, on a plusieurs micros qui circulent dans la salle.
Bon après-midi, bonsoir, bonjour. My name is George, and my artist name is Chairman George. I'm Greek Canadian. In 2018, I released an album at the National Arts Centre merging Greek and Chinese music, Greek songs in Mandarin Chinese. I've also toured China extensively. Because of the pandemic for 3 summers, I went to Britannia Park here in Ottawa and just performed on a bench for people from around the world. What I would like to do, my next recording project, is to record an album of anywhere from 12 to 15 languages, one song in a different language from around the world. My question is, because to reflect the beautiful diversity of Canada. Question 1, is this realistic? And number 2, how would peer assessment take place for not multidisciplinary, but a multiple language project like that? Or in Greek, thank you. In Greek, ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Chairman George, thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Chairman George, for sharing that. I mean, sounds wonderful and amazing. So for your question about funding that's available, please stay a little bit after, because we have many Canada Council employees here who would be very happy to give you some tips on, how to navigate our funding programs. But you do raise a really interesting question about how do we manage those type of multi-language projects in peer assessment committees, and I think that was probably very interesting for many of our audience. So maybe I'll ask you, Lisanne, to talk to us a little bit about that. That's a great question.
Well,
thank you.
For those of you who go into our portal and self-nominate to be a peer assessor, you'll see that one of the questions we ask you is whether you speak English, whether you speak French, but we also ask about other kinds of linguistic expertise, precisely for this kind of reason, because there are times when in peer assessment we need to call on people who can speak other languages than English and French. We also build into our process the ability to bring in on specific files additional expertise. So absolutely, sounds like a very eligible project. We'd be happy to talk to you afterwards and point you in the right direction, and we're pretty confident that we could make sure that it's assessed properly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Zanetti, dignityfordiversity.ca. In 2019, I was told by a festival to remove my rainbow sticker from my volunteer ID badge because it was considered branding. You're still funding it. The bigger picture is this. I shouldn't be judged on my identity displayed. I should be judged on my actions. If I'm a bad person, kick me out. The bigger picture is this. People who identify with any of the grounds of the Canadian Human Rights Code should be able to wear something reflecting that while volunteering or working, whether you're an artist, a staff person, or a volunteer. This is healthy. You have to have a healthy organizations as a whole. We want to be accepted, respected, and protected. And I think your role, I believe, is to provide some protection in requiring organizations that you fund to demonstrate how they are protecting persons who identify with the Canadian Human Rights Code wearing something. And I don't see it. It may be implicit, but it has to be explicit, in my opinion. Closets are not healthy. Artists need administration and volunteers to carry things through. If you're going to provide a diverse artistry to bring a diverse audience, well, guess what? Volunteers and admin people are part of that process. And I think it's your role as leaders at the top to demonstrate that, to provide that thing, and demand it. This is the 21st century. So I implore on you to take action, look into it. I'll be glad to work with you or suggestions on the policy side. I think this is something we have to do in that, let's honor those who worked hard and long to get those enumerated grounds in the Human Rights Code by bringing them forward, bringing that visibility to a level that is acceptable. I should be celebrated, not a target of hate. I thank you.
I 100% agree with everything you said. So thank you for making that statement. It's absolutely part of our values and how we want to work, both at the Canada Council, but also in the way that we support the sector. So I think you make a really, really important point. Maintaining, ensuring the safety and well-being of everyone, free of racism, free of discrimination, is really important. And the importance of healthy workplaces, as you say, is absolutely critical. So thank you for making that statement. And we are in complete agreement with you. Thank you.
Michelle, could I also
Please do.
just say something? And to reassure you, we do have a number of policies in place, and we also have criteria that requires organizations to demonstrate how they are supporting equity and diversity and inclusion. But I also just want to say how important volunteers are to the arts sector. And so I just want to recognize and thank you for your volunteer time. I know how much arts organizations and artistic projects depend on volunteers from across the country to be able to support everything from their front of house to their ticketing to their community engagement. So thank you, and it's my second pitch is volunteer for your local arts organization. Thank you.
That's great, thank you.
Hi there, my name is Jonathan Hoban. I'm the Executive Director of the SPAL Photographic Arts Center. I really appreciate the opportunity to ask a question. When we hear about budgets becoming smaller and potentially funding being decreased for organizations that are already tightly funded, and the idea of laying more people off is a struggle. I think organizations and artists might take comfort in a more transparency about how much percentage of the budget is allocated for staffing and contract work at the Canada Council versus how much is actually distributed to artists and arts organizations. I think there's an accountability here when we think about it, and will the proportion of staffing change in alignment with the spending budget that the council will be distributing? Thank you very much for your question.
That's a really, really good question. Thank you. And one of the commitments we've made is to increase our transparency. So we want to be much more transparent about everything that we do. And that includes all of our financial information. So we do publish our annual report that has that information. But I think what we can do better is provide the context. So we also publish our quarterly financial statements. I know that sounds very bureaucratic, but it does include the lines, what goes to grants, what goes to services, what goes to admin overhead. And one of the things that we're very conscious of is trying to provide as much of our funding directly to the sector. And almost 90% of our funding goes to the sector, and we're every quarter, those of you who run businesses, you look at the bottom line. We have the board scrutinizes every spending that we do. So while we do need, staff to deliver the programs, our first lens is how much can we give directly to the sector. But I take your point, increase the transparency, make that information available, and we're definitely working in that direction. It's not perfect yet, but it will keep improving. So I really appreciate that question. Approximately, close to.
87-13.
Oh, there you go. See, the chair of the board knows exactly the numbers. So yeah, we just talked about that today. So yes, and more transparency. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Jensen, and I'm a novelist. For the last year, I've been working at the Integrated Care Hub in Kingston, which is a safe injection site homeless shelter. We have an incredible diversity of artists there, musicians, we have visual artists, we have poets, we have rappers, we have a lot of people. These are people that would never consider applying to the Canada Council, and in fact don't even qualify to apply to the Canada Council. My experience as a working poor artist over the past 20 years is that poverty is the #1 barrier to participation in the arts in this country and elsewhere. And I've raised this concern a number of times through past surveys, and I've never heard the mention of these socioeconomic barriers. And I'm just wondering why that is and what you guys are doing to address that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Jesse to answer that question.
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. I appreciate it a lot. So the council is very aware that poverty remains, and has been for quite some time, the #1 challenge for access, both in terms of consumption of the arts, like going to an art, buying a book or going to see a show, as well as producing art. One of the things we hear a lot about is the rising cost of materials, the rising cost and lack of studio space, just the ability to actually have your artistic practice be viable is a real challenge. So we're absolutely aware that this is true. And in fact, the Canada Council, like I would include pretty much every funding body in this country. One of the realities that we have had to face over time is that our funding, the grants we give, have become part of the social safety net for artists in this country in a way that Arts Council funding was never intended to be, right? Like it was never meant. It was meant to create. It was meant to foster creation. It was not meant to keep the lights on. But that is the reality that so many of the people that we serve face. So we're very well aware of that. In terms of how we advocate for that, the council does advocate to the government around issues around, for example, for several years we advocated around a universal basic income as one solution that would benefit artists but would then benefit the broader Canadian society. We've advocated around changes to the tax code so that there's less burden on people that work temporary or work that isn't necessarily employment in the way that the tax code might consider it. So there's several avenues, and those advocacy points are those that exist sort of beyond the purview of the Canada Council, right? The Canada Council, via its mandate, via its budget, is unable to cure poverty, quite obviously, but we can be a voice for the community when we meet with the government to express exactly what you're expressing, to say this is what we are hearing, and we urge you to address that in policy solutions that you do have control over, that exist beyond our purview, because we think they would be benefit to our communities, and that they would allow the Canada Council funding that the government does give us to actually achieve what it's meant to do, which is to foster all of this creativity as opposed to unfortunately being necessary for people to live. And so we do advocate for that. We do absolutely recognize that poverty is a significant issue for access, not just in our sector, but for sectors across the board. And we will continue, certainly I will in my time as chair. The government is a little bit sick of hearing this from me, but I will continue every time I meet with them to say that these are the things we actually need if you want a vibrant cultural sector in Canada. But thank you very much for the question. Chi Miigwech.
Bonjour. Question en français.
Allez-y.
Yves Nadon, je suis président, directeur général des Éditions 2, une maison d'édition jeunesse au Québec depuis 8 ans. On a gagné des prix à Bologne comme meilleur éditeur et voilà. J'avais pas pensé poser une question. Je pensais profiter du fait qu'il n'y aurait pas beaucoup de personnes ici, qu'on serait seulement 10, puis je prendrai un verre de vin avec vous.
Avec
Mais
plaisir.
bon, je vois qu'on est plus que prévu. Je vais y aller avec une question. Actuellement, certains éditeurs se voient exclus du programme projet littéraire pour des raisons que nous considérons comme inéquitables. Entrer dans le programme de base éditeur littéraire est difficile malgré l'atteinte des objectifs de celui-ci. Parallèlement, ceux qui bénéficient de subventions de base expriment des préoccupations quant au manque de transparence, aux écarts significatifs entre les montants accordés entre certains éditeurs qui ont des activités littéraires similaires. Alors, est-ce que le Conseil des arts est prêt à réexaminer sa méthodologie, ses critères d'évaluation de ces deux programmes?
Merci pour la question. Lisanne?
Oui, bien sûr. Alors, nous avons des composantes dans nos programmes pour soutenir le fonctionnement. Alors, nos composantes de base à travers plusieurs programmes. Une composante, c'est pour les éditeurs et c'est dans le programme Appuyer la pratique artistique. Nous avons un budget, malheureusement, fixe pour cet investissement dans les organismes comme les éditeurs pour le fonctionnement. Alors, malheureusement, il faut qu'on travaille avec le budget qu'on a. Et chaque demandeur est évalué avec les mêmes critères et il y a toujours, chaque compétition, il y a toujours un mouvement de fond. Alors, il y a toujours la possibilité pour ce budget qui est quand même fixe d'avoir un mouvement de fond pour entrer les nouveaux organismes. Les critères sont établis aux fonctions du programme. Alors, les programmes ont des objectifs qui sont assez précis et les critères sont liés aux objectifs du programme. Nous sommes toujours à l'écoute pour mieux comprendre si les composantes, si ces objectifs appuient vraiment le secteur artistique. Alors, je vous invite de peut-être m'envoyer un courriel ou de parler un peu plus tard, plus précisément, quelles sont les inéquités que nos critères créent. Mais juste pour vous assurer, il y a toujours un mouvement de fond, il y a toujours la possibilité pour les nouveaux organismes. Merci.
Merci.
Une autre question?
Oui. On arrive avec un micro.
Hi, my name is Penny McCann. I'm a local filmmaker, and I just want to pick up on something Jesse talked about, and that is the CRA and T4As for artist grants. It is a burden. Not only is it, everything about the tax system is a burden, and it's obviously a burden. It remains a burden to artists, but the lack of response, the lack of ability of the CRA to change the coding on that T4A is harming artists. I just went through a ridiculous year of back and forth because they don't recognize self-employed, the self-employed nature of artists. So I'm just saying this to put it on the public record. Yeah. And I appreciate, I understand how difficult it is speaking to CRA and having them change things, and I just urge you to keep at it because these are not student bursaries. And it remains a real burden for artists receiving grants.
100% agree that it's important for us to play that role, so that public policy role, and I can assure you that we do behind the scenes continuously try and work with our federal counterparts, but especially in the areas that directly affect artists. So you make an excellent point, and we will continue to advocate for a better understanding of the artists and how artists work and what are their conditions and employment. So thank you for raising that. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Michel. Merci, Jessie. Merci, Lisanne. Voilà, c'est donc ce qui... merci pour vos questions.
Il y a une question.
Ah, une autre
There's one more
question?
question, and
Très
then
bien.
after, we'll
Okay.
start wrapping up. But thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
My name is Patrice James. I'm a long-standing artist in the community here, peer assessor with Canada Council for the Arts, a past arts administrator, so I've been in the community for a long time. And I have both a question wrapped into with a comment as well. So in 2021, the Canada Council for the Arts asked the community to assist it with a major recruitment campaign to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so my question is, sorry, I have to read off my phone.
That's good.
We've all been there.
I recently had to get readers, so.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask a question. How is the council actively addressing systemic barriers, biases, and discrimination in hiring practices regarding equitable, creating a more inclusive and equitable environment that values skills and qualifications over language proficiency or other non-essential criteria. It is essential when working with BIPOC communities to create opportunities for all individuals, regardless of their background, to thrive and contribute to diversity and vibrancy of the Canadian art sector. Mm-hmm. So are you guys going to work with some of the recommendations that you've gotten from organizations like the Racial Equity Media Collective and so on to continue to address some of these inequities?
So the most direct answer to that is yes. It's extremely important for the Canada Council to ensure that in all of our hiring practices that we have as much diversity, equity, inclusion in our staff complement, in our processes, in our policies, and so we do a lot of internal work around systemic biases, around eliminating racism and discrimination in our work environment, but also in targeted recruitment. So we do look at how do we ensure that we have a very balanced and diverse workforce, and always make extra steps to ensure that diversity inclusion is in all parts of our organization at all levels as well. So in senior levels and officers in every single part of this organization. So I really appreciate that question. So thank you for that. I think we're wrapping up, right?
Merci
Okay,
beaucoup, Michel.
thank you.
Merci pour vos questions. C'est ce qui met fin, malheureusement, à notre Assemblée publique annuelle. Merci pour toutes celles et ceux qui se sont joints à nous aujourd'hui en présentiel, ici même, et bien entendu aux personnes qui nous ont joints également depuis de manière virtuelle. Merci également à l'ensemble de mes collègues qui ont rendu possible l'organisation de cette assemblée et qui, au quotidien, expriment également leur passion pour le mandat du Conseil des arts. Merci à vous. Thank you, miigwech.